This is Legacy 21st, an online summit of arts and ideas on organizing 50 years after King. April 3rd was the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. And what we know a lot about the civil rights movement is that it utilized a whole array of strategies and tactics to help move forward the whole notion and concept of racial equality. Tactics like marches and sit-ins and freedom rides and civil disobedience. And these were well thought out tactics, not just haphazard or what happened to spring up in the spur of the moment. And because they were well thought out, they galvanized a nation. So this summit series brings together several experts who are proficient at organizing and activism around different topics. We wanted to get their thoughts on what tactics and methods which worked then also work now, and which new ones are at play, and what are the front lines of activism in the 21st century. So with me today is a remarkable woman, the multi-talented Rokhaya Diallo. She's a filmmaker, a journalist, the host of BET France, and a longtime organizer and activist around racial, gender, and religious equality issues in France. Welcome, Diallo. Rokhaya, my love. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Okay, so let's begin. You are a first-generation Parisian. Your parents are from Senegal and Gambia, and you were born in France. So what sparked your activism, and what made you found Indivisibles?
Well, several things drove my attention to racism. So as you said, I was born and raised in Paris, and for a long time, I thought of myself as an average, French woman. And at some point, I realized that people, as I was Black, kept asking me where I was from, meaning that I was coming from, another place.
Yes.
And many people were surprised of the fact that I could speak French without having, an accent, that I was really, I was a French woman, but with a dark skin. And I kept justifying myself, explaining that I was born there, that my family and my roots were in Senegal. And I understood that people like me were not visible in the public sphere, so that there was a need to make them public. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, when I was, whenever I was watching TV, going to the movies, I never saw anyone who looked like me. So I decided, and when there was a topic, a debate about immigration, about diversity, about the hijab, the Muslim hijab, it was always a debate among white men, and there was never anyone who was from a minority. So I felt that there was a need to have, new voices, to have other voices, and that's how came the idea of Les Indivisibles.
So what is Indivisibles?
So Les Indivisibles is, the indivisibility is a principle of our constitution in France. It says that France is a country which is indivisible, meaning that, there is, so the French Republic is a whole. So our goal was to say, us as French people, we're part of the whole. Mm-hmm. So we can't be, excluded from that, being asked questions as if we were, foreigners. And the other thing is that we wanted to say that we were indivisible as individuals. So even if we are, roots in Africa or in Asia, we couldn't have our identity being divided or diminished by the fact that it was plural. That was the meaning of that. So we decided to use humor to tackle bigotry in the media. So whenever there was someone saying racist, statements, we tried to tackle it, and we created a ceremony that was like an award ceremony, a parody that would reward every year all the worst racist sentences.
Wow, 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 wow. The
Yeah.
French have a long history and reputation of being racially evolved. In fact, in World War I and II, there were many African Americans who expatriated to France for cultural and personal freedom. So, is this reputation that France has true? Is it accurate? And is this image of tolerance one that you experience in France?
I think that the image is accurate. Like France was really welcoming for African American in during the last century, in the 20s, in the 30s, and until during the segregation. And many African American went to France to escape racism. But what people tend to forget is that at the same time, France was still a colonial power, meaning that my family in Africa was colonized at the very same time. So whereas they were welcoming African American, they were oppressing other Black people in Africa and even on their own soil. Like there were many people from Algeria who were fighting in the 50s for the independence, and they were being abused, by the French police in the 50s. At the same time, when James Baldwin was there, he wrote about the Algerians, and there has always been a double standard. Like for example, if you come today as an African American in France, you won't be treated in the same way as me because you're American. So as soon as people understand that you're American, your Americanness erases your Blackness. You're part of something that is, it's like it's more, it's bigger than your Blackness. You belong to something that is prestigious, which is the US.
Yes, yes. There was a time when my parents are immigrants to the United States from a British colony. And my father told me about how when he first came in the 50s and 40s and 50s mostly, he would be able to be in segregated communities by pretending he didn't speak English or by reasserting the fact that he was not a Black American. And it gave him a free pass in this country for a while.
And that's quite the same, when I go to the US, with my accent, people, they're like, oh, your accent, where is it from? And as soon as they understand that I'm French, I'm not Black anymore. I'm like, the person who you can speak about fashion about, who you can I'm related to something else than Blackness. And the thing is that I think that I don't belong to the history of the US. So I'm not seen as, bringing an argument, to the white people who are Americans. So it's like, I think it's quite the same. But it's true that if you want, to be treated differently as a Black American person, you have to go to France. Ta-Nehisi Coates did the same like last year.
Yes.
And he didn't experience anything that I do experience every day as a Black French.
Yeah. So you did a film about the March on Washington in the United States and paralleled it to France. I don't think many people here know that there was a march in France as well in 1983. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So in 1983, there was a young man, Tumi Jaija. He was 19 at that time. He was from Algerian background, and he was shot in the stomach by the police. And he was left like almost dead. He spent 1 month in hospital. He was 2 weeks in coma. And when he woke up, he thought about Martin Luther King, and he decided to march peacefully to protest against racist brutality. And it was incredible because he started from Marseille in the south of France, and there were only 12. And they marched from Marseille until Paris. And by the time they arrived to Paris, there were 100,000.
Wow.
Meaning that if you relate 100,000 to the whole French population, it's more than the March on Washington. It was a major success.
Wow.
And it was, started by a group of young people who just wanted to, to bring their voice. But it was, at the end of the day, even if there were many people, it was not as successful as the March on Washington, because they were not activists in the first time. So they didn't have strategies, and it was very easy for the power to just, erase them.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it lasted only a few months.
So tell us some about the causes that you help organize or work with in France.
So I work mostly on sexism and racism, and I'm really involved in everything that is related to police brutality. I try to cover that because it's, the level of police brutality is not as high as in the US, because, the first reason is that we don't have the same issues with guns.
Yes.
People don't die with gun violence as much as in the US. So that's the first reason. So but most of the people who are killed by the police are men of color. So mostly Arabs or Black, 90% from poor neighborhoods. Yeah. And it's not really seen as racial violence. It's not really covered by the media. So I try to cover those issues and to give a light to the families in order to make them being visible in the medias. Yeah. So inviting them on BT, trying to write about them on French and in international medias. And the other causes I try to work on is like the visibility of minority women. So especially trying to support, all the women, but there is an issue in France with women, Muslim women with a hijab.
Yes.
It's something crazy in France. It's like nobody wants to see them, and they are really targeted by many measures. So I try to make people understand that they need to have a voice and that they should be interviewed, because we speak every day about them, but none of them have access to the public sphere.
So people speak about them, but they can't speak for themselves.
No, and whenever there is one of them who is invited on TV, she's being she's disqualified. They're saying, no, you're not free. You cannot be free as a woman wearing that. We know how to free you. And it's insane. It's like you have white feminists saying them, you can be free with that on your head. And being free in France means being uncovered.
Yeah, it's patronizing.
Definitely it's that.
Mm-hmm. So, as I mentioned earlier, the civil rights movement employed a number of different tactics. Which ones do you find have been most effective in France as you do organizing or see organizing around the country?
I would say we never really have a culture of boycott, which I think is a pity.
We never have what? Say that again. You never really have
a culture of boycotting.
Boycott, yes, got it.
Yeah, we never. It's not something that people do in France, and to me, it's a pity because it would be a powerful tool. But we do march, and I think that marching works very well. It works well because it makes people visible in the streets, and you have in France we do march, and that works because that really. You have coverage, you have media coverage, you have people being visible, addressing issues. And it's something that has been inspired in 1983 from the March on Washington, and that is still relevant today.
So when you came to the States to work on your most recent film, when you went to Ferguson, and you've been to other places in the States to see how activism takes place with Black Lives Matter, what were you able to take away from that or to connect between the two countries?
That was very interesting. The first thing is that I have been able to follow what was happening in the US thanks to the social media. The hashtag activism has helped me, just being, at my place and following live what was going on in Ferguson, Missouri. And not having to go through the mainstream media, just having the coverage from the people who were on the ground and who were just seeing what was happening. Yeah. And that the other thing is that made me possible to connect directly with those people who were there. And that's something very new. And to me, it's something that, the people who are activists now can learn from. Like people in Ferguson told me that when they were targeted by tear gas, they were getting tweets from people in Palestine who were, helping them how to face tear gas, how to protect themselves, to build masks. And that's something that is great. And I think that we can learn from that, like saying, if something happens to you, you can definitely try to share your experience live and to help people not to make the same mistakes as you did and to face and even to anticipate what can happen.
Yeah, that's a great example. So the term intersectionality is being used a lot in the last few years, and it means the interconnected nature of social categories such as race, class, and gender, and how they approach the interlocking power systems that impact the most marginalized people in society. So is there an intersectional coalition in France between differing organizing groups, say ones that are tackling religious oppression and racial oppression or police violence? Are there ways in which these groups work together?
Sure. The thing is that when you are a woman from a minority, you are intersectional because you are a woman, you are from a minority, and I happen to be Muslim as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can be I can be, I can be, I have to be intersectional, and there are, all the young activists, they are really thinking about oppressions, in plural. Like it's not one oppression, and another. It's all the oppressions all together.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have noticed, for example, is that the police brutality is mostly focused on men, even if you have women who are facing police brutality. But the people who survive, the victims of police brutalities, are women. So you have the sisters,
Yes.
mothers of the people who are killed, who are being the faces of the protest against police brutality. I can name two women, Amal Bentounsi, I invited in New York.
Yes, we were there. I was there.
Yes. So her brother was shot in the back by the police, and she started like an organization against police brutality, and she's now advising people who are facing that and who don't know what to do.
Wow.
And there is another woman whose name is Assa Traoré. Her brother was asphyxiated by the police, and she's now like, she's going everywhere in the world to speak about what happened to her. So you have those women who are like they are the only one to they survive police
They are the survivors. Yeah,
they are survivors. So that is something that is, to me, very, very powerful, because you see that those struggles are handled by women.
I wanted to ask you also about the role of women as you travel around the world, seeing activism, organizing in action. The role of women seems to be much more front and center than it may have been 50 or 60 years ago. It wasn't that, for example, in the civil rights movement, women did not participate. We know they did, and some of them were very prominent. But I remember Dorothy Height, who started the National Association of Negro Women, often was in meetings with the leadership of the civil rights movement, and they were all men. So although we know that there were women that were active, they may not have been in the forefront. Do you find that it's different now? I remember from your film that you met with a lot of female activists, and they seem to be really front and center. Do you see this in other parts of the world and in France too?
Yes. I saw that in the US. What I understood is that the women from the younger generations understood that there were women before in the civil rights movement, but that you had men who were taking like the lights and who were taking the microphones, who were being filmed, while the women were also working with them. So now we don't remember the names of, most of the people don't remember the names of those women, although they were there. But now they have the need of, to say, we are here and we won't, give you the space to erase us. It's not, it won't be the case anymore. And it's very different. It's the case for women. It's the case for, queers as well, because there was also, one of the closest friend of Martin Luther King, Bayard Rustin, who was homosexual, and he couldn't be visible because of that. And today people know his name, and you have people, Black Lives Matter was founded by 3 women, and 2 of them were LGBT. Mm-hmm. And that's great. Mm-hmm. And I can say that in France, it's something that is important because you have, feminists from the minorities who are handling at the same time anti-sexism and anti-racism. Yeah. And they are the ones who have the most who are the trailblazers. They are the ones who have the newest ideas, who are, really moving things.
Powerful. So not only are you a television journalist where you bring some of these matters to the forefront, you are also often the person being covered and interviewed in the media, and especially for your politics. For example, I think many of us know in January, we saw it in the New York Times, was in the Guardian in London. You were covered in the Western media for a couple of weeks because of your expulsion from a national commission in France on digital policy. What was that backlash like that you experienced? Was it very different now from what it was when you started Indivisibles about 18 years ago? And my next part of that question is, how do you keep your online privacy and your personal safety and your peace of mind and your spirits up as you build community in the midst of all of this negativity that you experience sometimes?
Thank you for asking the question. Actually, yes, what happened, so I was appointed to be part of the digital council. It was I was appointed by the Prime Minister. And as soon as that appointment was made public, people, there have been a backlash. So people were tweeting very violently against me, saying that I was, my views on racism were not, it was not possible to have that in an instance that was close to the government, an institution that was close to the government. And you had people who called, they called the office of the Prime Minister, they called the president to say it's not possible. So the minister in charge of that institution issued a statement saying, okay, we need to have a new committee without her. So he didn't name me, but everybody understood that it was about me.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so obvious. And the president of the commission decided not to accept, so she resigned. And then everyone in the council resigned. Wow. So that there hasn't been a council since then. For there is no one there, just one person. And what I learned is that, I'm one of the few minorities who is visible in the mainstream in France and who speaks at the same time on race. Yes. And I have the feeling that my country is not ready for that. You can't be a minority and be visible and speak about race. It's too much. It's like the country can't stand that. We can, I have the feeling that they were saying to me, you should be happy to be where you are. You're a TV presenter.
Grateful.
Exactly. You should be grateful. Why are you so angry? We gave you everything. And that's the thing that I feel. So it was violent, but at the same time, it was really, that was great to see so much solidarity from the other members. It was really, really, yes, powerful. Because they said to the government, no, we decided to have the council like that and you won't change it. If we can work together, we will not work at all. And that was a good, a good turn. Very and much. The other thing is that, to answer to the second part of your question, I'm fortunate to travel a lot. That really helps me to step away from France. I'm not always immersed in the local context, and I can see my country from the outside, and it helps me understand that everything is not that serious. That's things that happens here. That there are some things that happen here that no one cares about out of France. So if something seems serious to me, when I go out, people are like, who's that person? What is that? And that helps me understand that, okay, other things are going on out of France. And I
You get a
try,
little perspective.
exactly, because, French people, we're only 1% of the global population. That's nothing.
Exactly.
Even if we think of ourselves as France, like the country of culture and arts, we're only 1%. And there are, billions of people who really don't care about us. So that's something that really makes you humble.
Yeah.
And really try to take care of myself, to to eat well, to go to sports, and to have moments with my family, to really to get to breathe, to go to the movies, to have some spaces in which it's not all about activism. I can nurture my spirit, my joy. It's very important, because if you only focus on everything that is negative, it's very difficult for you to be solid enough to go in front of the cameras and say what you have to say.
Rokhaya, I'm so glad you said that, because I've known you for a few years now, and I have to admit, I only know you and understand you in the space of activism. The fact that you have a family, that you hang out with people and go to the movies, that you might want to chill and watch TV all day on your couch if you have the time. I don't even think of you in those terms. So I'm really happy to know that you're a regular sister, like all of us, trying to have a life. Yeah. So how does your family react to all of this, though? All of what happens to you when things come up?
They are very protective, and they're protective, and sometimes they're concerned because they see all the hate that I can get on social media, and it's disproportionate, so they can see people really insulting me in crazy ways. So that sometimes they have concerns, but the thing is that what I like is that at the same time they don't act as if I was doing something very exceptional.
Yeah.
Like, it's my work. Yeah. And it doesn't count more than any other, as the work as my other, the other members of my family.
Yes.
You're not, and that's something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can go watch.
Exactly.
Take out the trash. That'd be all right. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that's cool. That's something cool, because that makes you okay. It's like, okay, you have a job and something you have, like it can be sometimes, things are not going well when you at the place where you work, but it's not something more. And they're very supportive, and they come when I have a conference, when I have an event. My mother comes. It's really great. It's really cool, and at the same time, I really try to keep my privacy. So whenever I have a
good job on that, because I don't know much about your personal life at all. Good for you.
Yes, and it's important to me. I try not to give anything that could help the haters and people who don't like me to really have something that could hurt me. So even when I have a profile in a newspaper, I try not to give them anything that could be too personal. Yeah. But if you come to Paris, I will try my best to show you my regular life, to introduce you my people. That's you have another another point of view of what you know about me.
Yeah. Well, we've had our time hanging out in Harlem a couple of times.
Yes, we did.
I have to do that on the other side too.
Yes, definitely.
So we're going to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you, what are you working on now? Or are there any projects you want people to know about? Ways they can follow you or participate in your work? Are you coming back to the States anytime soon?
I'm working on a project of short videos about the effects of all the counterterrorism law in France, because I have the feeling that there have been a kind of backlash regarding civil liberties, and that the government have used the fact that we have been targeted by terrorism to yes, maybe to target certain parts of the population and to over police them. So I'm trying to get some of the voices of the people who have been the victims of that, to display, to display them and to show to the, to my country what happens, because most of the people are not aware of that. Yes.
Well,
And
go ahead.
yeah. And if people want to reach me, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram and on Facebook, and I'm really responsive. So I'll be happy to, if they have any questions, any things to share, I'll be happy to respond.
Thank you so much. We've had a little rocky connection, but I'm happy to be able to reach out and see you and touch you across the ocean by the miracle of our laptops.
So
in all that you do, take good care.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for reaching out to me. It's a pleasure to be part of the global project and to show to people how, the fight, the struggle of the civil rights movement reflects on us even across the ocean.
And even today.
Yes. Right. Thank you.
Bye.